For the second time in as many days, the New York Rangers absolutely destroy their opponent just one day after defeating the Pittsburgh Penguins 6-0 on Saturday. The Rangers run it back, and they take down the Nashville Predators by a final score of 7-0 on Sunday. We're going to talk about just a mind-blowing sequence in this game that saw the Rangers score 6 goals on 6 consecutive shots on goal. Also going to give some props to Kane Miller for his big game, a 4-point performance, 2 goals and 2 assists. Got somewhat close to a hat trick, wasn't meant to be, but obviously a fantastic performance by Kane Miller. Also going to give some credit to Jaroslav Halak, who gets a shutout for the Rangers' second straight shutout victory. All that and much more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 788 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And I got a question for all you Ranger fans out there. How is everybody feeling right now? Did everybody have a nice weekend? Did everybody get the chance to sit down, watch some Ranger hockey, and see them just squeak by the Penguins, see them just squeak by the Nashville Predators? Just some great stuff all around. Complete and utter domination for the entire weekend. First the Penguins, then the Predators. And it's funny because it wasn't really that long ago where I came on here and I was talking about how the Rangers had played well recently, but I kind of lamented the fact that the Rangers don't really ever seem to get that many blowout wins. They're few and far between. And granted, blowout wins are kind of rare in the NHL anyway because, how often do you get a game like this where you win 6-0 or you win 7-0? But I felt like the Rangers were overdue to just, really take it to one of these teams and, basically just coast to a victory. And that happens not once, but twice over the weekend here, winning these 2 games by a combined final score of 13-0. And to kind of illustrate my point, the last time the Rangers won a game by more than 2 goals was back on February 26. In that game, they beat the Los Angeles Kings by a final score of 5-2. The second most recent time that it happened, you'd have to go all the way back to February 11th. That was a 6-2 win against the Carolina Hurricanes. So it hasn't been happening that often, but obviously the Rangers made up for that in a big way over the weekend here. And something else that I addressed in our most recent episode, obviously, we did a Sunday episode talking about the Rangers' 6-0 win against the Penguins and how awesome that was. I'm not a big fan of sports cliches, but you hear the term letdown game or like trap game get thrown around every once in a while. Like I said, I don't really buy into that much, but if there was ever a case where maybe that could happen, you figure it might be a game like this against the Nashville Predators because the Rangers just played the Penguins twice. We know how out of control that rivalry has been over the last couple of seasons here in the playoff series last year. The Rangers beat the Penguins twice, the second time in just completely one-sided, butt-kicking fashion. And then after that, you're playing your third game in 4 days. You're playing the second game of a back-to-back. You're going with your backup goalie. You're playing the Nashville Predators team, and there's not really a lot of history between the Rangers and the Predators. If there was ever a time for there to be a little bit of a letdown, this maybe would be it, but that was not the case at all because not only did the Rangers win this game in lopsided fashion, they absolutely stormed out of the starting blocks. They were up, 6-0, about 10 minutes into this game, razor sharp, right from the opening faceoff, right until the final horn, and that's obviously great to see and very encouraging to see going forward. And I think there's somewhat of a reason why this is happening, why we're seeing the Rangers be so razor sharp recently, and I'm going to get into that in greater detail a little bit later in today's episode. But right now, I want to go ahead and just kind of break down these goals. I mean, just a marathon of goals being scored by the New York Rangers in this game, one after the next, and it's kind of just like an overarching theme here. I thought on Saturday, the game against the Penguins, that was a case of, a lot of really pretty goals, a lot of gorgeous goals with all these, passing and just, great shots and just rushes into the zone, just some really beautiful goals, the kind that show up on top 10, plays of the night and all that good stuff. I thought Sunday, there were a couple of those. There certainly were a couple of those gorgeous type goals where, the Rangers just, made a couple of passes or somebody, made a great individual effort. Philip Heedle's goal certainly comes to mind. I thought the one where Trocheck fed Kane Miller, that one comes to mind as well. But the bigger theme of the goals that the Rangers scored on Sunday, at least to me, was just hard work. The Rangers were in on the forecheck. A lot of these goals were scored after the Rangers had already spent a considerable amount of time in the Nashville zone. They came after the Rangers won a 50-50 puck or two, or, won a board battle to keep possession alive, or, somebody made a pass despite not really having a lot of real estate, not having a lot of room to maneuver. A lot of these goals came, like I said, after the puck was already in the Nashville zone for quite some time. And that, to me, in a lot of ways, is even better than like the highlight reel goals, the ones with all the fancy passing and all that good stuff. Because the Rangers already know they can win games with skill, but when you're winning games like this with grit against a team that's kind of known for its grit in the Nashville Predators, and look, I realize the Predators were missing some key players for this game. I get that. 7-0 win, though, is still a 7-0 win. And when you think of the Nashville Predators, you think of a team that likes to win gritty, grinded out, low-scoring type games. They're the team that tries to beat everybody 2-1. I checked the stats earlier today. The Predators, in this season so far, they are 5th to last in the NHL in goal scores, but they have also allowed the 12th fewest goals. They've got great goalies. They play good team defense. And like I said, they're a gritty team. And so for the Rangers to out-grit one of the grittier teams that they'll play and put up 7 goals against a team that's MO is playing in low-scoring games and just finding a way to edge out teams in low-scoring games, that's tremendously impressive. To me, in some ways, and I know they were short players and they were compromised and all that good stuff, but in some ways, the manner in which the Rangers scored their goals in this game, more impressive than how they scored their goals in the Penguins game. I mean, you could take your pick. They were both obviously very convincing, very dominant wins. But for me, at least, very, very gratifying to see the Rangers, win with some grit in this game. It wasn't all skill. But for starters, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about all the goals that the Rangers scored. We'll go through these kind of rapid fire, but I do want to spend some time on this first one, scored by Philip Hedl. You had Miller passing from behind the New York Ranger net up to Philip Hedl in the neutral zone, and Philip Hedl basically just took care of the rest here, just explodes up the ice, pretty much went around every single player on the Nashville Predators, making moves left and right through the neutral zone. Once he gained the blue line, he was a man on a mission. He was going straight to the net. He had 3 Predators all converging on him at the same time. Faked one of the defensemen out of his skates, went between the 2 defensemen, and scored on the breakaway, shot it underneath the glove of the goalie there. But he went flying in and certainly earned this goal here, which was his 20th of the season. And an interesting postscript as far as this goal is concerned, Jaroslav Halak gets the secondary assist, his first assist of the season. He had a phenomenal game as well, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. But as far as Hedl goes, yeah, very nice to see him, get off the schneid here. It had been 17 or 18 goals since he had, or 17 or 18 games since Philip Hedl had scored a goal. Nice to see him get involved. Kaapo Kakko had an assist later, and that's good as well because he's been in a scoring drought. Really, the only thing you can nitpick over these last handful of games for the Rangers is that the kid line hasn't really done a whole lot. But once again, nice to see Philip Hedl snap his scoring streak. Nice to see Kaapo Kakko at least get on the score sheet a little bit later in the game as well. And then you get a familiar source providing the second goal of the game. That would, of course, be Mika Zibanejad. The Rangers are absolutely swarming in the offensive zone. Mika has a shot blocked, but the Rangers keep play alive. And this goes back to what I was talking about just a second ago. The theme of this game, the Rangers just outworking the Predators and doing everything they could possibly do to keep plays alive. A lot of guys had a hand in this one, but eventually you got Panarin passing across the ice to his left to Mika Zibanejad, and Mika stuffs it home to make it 2-0. And then you get another long offensive zone possession, and keep an eye out for how many times I'm going to say that, because that was the case for, like I said, a ton of these goals in this game. But you've got Trouba and Miller playing pitch and catch a little bit. Trouba passes from the top of the left circle to the top of the right circle, and then Tyler Mott scores on a one-timer. Love seeing Tyler Mott get a goal. He brings a lot of grit and a lot of good defense to this Ranger team. Somebody that goes out there and seemingly just takes a beating on a night-in and night-out basis, but nice to see him get a couple of goals recently. He scored in the first of the 2 games against the Penguins as well. Great stuff. Nobody I'd rather see, put a puck in the net than Tyler Mott, because he definitely deserves it. We're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to discuss the last 3 Ranger goals, also get into the big night that was enjoyed by Jaroslav Halak. We're going to get to all that good stuff in just a second. But first, we got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And we just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. So to just kind of keep the good times rolling here, we'll go ahead and talk about the last 3 Ranger goals, or the last 4 Ranger goals, actually. I mean, there were 6 that happened early in the game, obviously all in the first period, and then we had Kreider scoring late. But, the Rangers, they're playing 4-on-4 here. Panarin actually wins a board battle in the Ranger zone, gets the puck ahead to Vincent Trocheck. It's a 2-on-1 the other way. Trocheck up the left side. He passes to his right to K'Andre Miller. Miller scores from the right circle, 4-0. And just like that, UC Saros has to come into this game because, they just couldn't get a save up to this point. But he didn't really fare much better in the early goings. Rangers end up with a 4-on-3 power play. Panarin delayed with the puck here. And honestly, it felt like Panarin almost kind of just shot the puck out of boredom here, and he scores anyway. He shot it off the near post and kind of just grazed the near post, goes into the net, and just like that, it's 5-0. Keep in mind, at this point in the game, we are only 10 minutes and 1 second into the game. So technically, the Rangers at this point were on pace to win this game by a final score of 30-0. Can you imagine an NHL game finishing with a score like that? Can you imagine even like 15-0? And can you imagine a team, gets up by like 15-0, 17-0, 20-0, and continues to try to pour it on? It'd be absolutely wild. And obviously, the Rangers weren't going to do that. It certainly felt like they took their foot off the gas a little bit later in this game and were content to just play defense and do everything they could to help Jaroslav Halak get the shutout there. But at this point, the Rangers had scored 4 goals in 2 minutes and 39 seconds, and then they make it 6-0. Once again, another very long possession for the Rangers. You had Kaapo Kakko, kind of circling with the puck. He held onto the puck forever, and this is what we want to see from Kaapo Kakko. We want to see him establish himself as, one of the big-time power forwards in this league. When Kakko has the puck and he doesn't want to give it up, there's not a whole lot that defenders can do, and it's been nice to see Kakko take advantage of that skill set, certainly a little bit last year and even more so this year, and it's something that I hope that he continues to do. In the most recent game, he was out there on the power play, and he really should have shot the puck. It was another situation where he had held onto the puck for a long time, and then a shot became available, and he just didn't take it. I'd like to see Kakko shoot the puck a little bit more as well. Be that as it may, Kakko's got the puck here. He plays it back to K'Andre Miller. Miller shoots from the blue line, and he scores, and it's 6-0. Looked like it might have taken a deflection off of one of the Nashville Predators, but be that as it may, another goal for K'Andre Miller. And at this point, the Rangers tied the franchise record for most goals in a first period with 6. The last time this happened was on December 15th, 1999 against the Kings, which is interesting because the Rangers were not very good back then. They were kind of in that in-between period, when they won the Cup in 1994 and those players began to leave by this point, and before the Henrik Lundqvist era started. It was not a fun era of Ranger hockey, but we'll leave that in the past. And then to just kind of put a bow on this whole thing, another long possession for the Rangers in the second period. Kreider with a stuff-in goal, number 32 on the season for Kreider. Mika Zibanejad, by the way, up to, I believe it's now 37 goals for Mika. Yes, 37 goals for Mika Zibanejad this season. Just a lot of Rangers up and down the lineup contributing, a lot of Rangers having big-time seasons, and it's been a joy to watch, and it's been great to see everything come together recently with all these new players, and just seeing the Rangers basically overwhelm their opponents, and playoffs right around the corner here. Only 12 games left, so great to see the Rangers playing better hockey than they've probably played for, I would say the entire season. Gonna keep everything rolling in just a second here. I want to talk about Jaroslav Halak and his big night. He gets a shutout for the Rangers one day after Igor Shesterkin got a shutout for the New York Rangers, and we will do that in just a second. But first, just want to let everybody know, today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you gotta try a Built Bar. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievably delicious flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now, you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. You can thank us later. All right, let's go ahead and talk about what was another strong performance for Jaroslav Halak. And it's interesting kind of the parallels that we saw between what Halak did in this game and what Igor Shesterkin did in the game against Pittsburgh. For starters, I mentioned when we did our recap of the Penguins game that Igor Shesterkin made a really big save early in that game, a difficult save right there on the doorstep, and you never know what can happen. I mean, maybe if the Penguins score there, the Rangers still win 6-1. Maybe the game unfolds in a completely different way, but something very, very similar happened with Jaroslav Halak in the first period here. I thought this was his best sequence of saves and maybe most important saves on the night. 2 minutes into the game, though, Predators come into the zone on a rush. Jaroslav Halak slides to his left to make a really nice save. He then made about 2 or 3 saves on stuff-in tries by the Nashville Predators. Sharp right out of the box, just would not let that puck get by him. And this also led to the Filipino goal, where he basically just skated around the entire Nashville team and scored. This happened, couldn't have been more than a minute after this. This really strong sequence of saves that was made by Jaroslav Halak here. And then also got to give some props to Jaroslav Halak for getting the secondary assist on this goal. I mentioned that a second ago as well. But here's a stat for you. So Igor Shesterkin ended up with an assist in the Pittsburgh game. Jaroslav Halak gets one here. So the Ranger goalies had a hand in 2 goals that the Rangers scored over this weekend, while also allowing 0 goals themselves. So the Ranger goalies combined for 2 assists while allowing 0 goals. That's how you know things are obviously going pretty well for your team. But that's pretty cool to see. I believe they said that was Jaroslav Halak's first point of the season, so that's pretty cool as well. And very, very nice to see both Ranger goalies playing very well down the stretch here. Igor Shesterkin running back into Vezina form, and obviously you hope and pray that Igor stays healthy. But it's nice to know that Halak has found his game as well, and that, he could be, if you really need him in a pinch, hopefully he can step into a big game and get you a win if the Rangers have to cross that bridge. But obviously we hope it doesn't come to that when it comes to the playoffs, because we want Igor Shesterkin out there for every single minute of every single game once the Rangers make it to the Stanley Cup playoffs. And Halak was on top of his game all night, right after the Hedl goal, and keep in mind, it's only 1-0 at this point. Halak fought off another shot from in deep, so once again, a very strong start to this game for Jaroslav Halak, and, those early saves are the bigger ones that he made in this game. Then, obviously, it's funny because the Rangers, against the Penguins, they're up 6-0 going into the third period. This game, the Rangers are up 7-0 against the Predators going into the third period, and we can all kind of rest easy and breathe and relax. It doesn't happen often in the NHL, especially with the Rangers, so when these games unfold like this, we have to enjoy it a little bit. Really, the only drama left was whether Jaroslav Halak would get the shutout. And it was the same deal in the game before with Igor Shesterkin. Of course, both goalies got the shutout for the Rangers. Jaroslav Halak in this game stops all 22 of the shots that he faced. And, got to give props to the Rangers as a team in general, because I thought they've defended very well in both of these last 2 games. Maybe against the Penguins, you could argue that they gave up a few more shots on goal than you would like, but I thought that was kind of quantity over quality for the Penguins. And then, of course, Igor Shesterkin making great save after great save whenever he needed to. And it was the same deal for Jaroslav Halak here. Although with Halak, obviously, and against the Predators here, only having to face 22 shots, you'll take that pretty much any night. But still, great game for Jaroslav Halak. And also wanted to turn our attention to Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko, because with Tarasenko, I feel like Ranger fans warmed up to him pretty quickly. With Patrick Kane, even though he's off to a pretty good start, I feel like there's some Ranger fans that maybe aren't quite sold on him, maybe want a little bit more out of Patrick Kane. I think they've both done a really nice job since coming over here. Both of them had spent their entire career, a decade plus with the team that drafted them. So obviously you got to get acclimated to a new city, new teammates, new coaching staff, new playing style, the whole 9 yards. But I think they've both done a great job. And I think what we're seeing right now, because when you watch this Ranger team, and it's not just because they won both these games in landslides, But you watch them, whether it's these two games or, the handful of games that have preceded these games against the Predators and Penguins here, the Rangers just look like a team that means business right now. They look like a team on a mission. They look like a team that is hell-bent on doing something very, very special this year. That being, of course, lifting the Stanley Cup when it's all said and done. There's no guarantees. Obviously, you get to the playoffs and it's anybody's game. There's no such thing as an easy series win in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But when you watch this Ranger team, they have all the tools. And now, I don't think the Rangers were a team that was lacking in leadership. When you look at guys like Jacob Trouba, Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, Artemi Panarin, even guys like Ryan Lindgren, I think a lot of guys kind of take their cues from him. There's other guys as well. Barclay Goodrow brings some leadership to the table for sure, and he's a former Stanley Cup champion, two-time Stanley Cup champion in his own right. But you add in guys that have been all-stars and guys that have been Stanley Cup champions like Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane, I think that makes an impact on the locker room. These are guys that have been there, done that, competed in the playoffs in, pretty much just about every season they've been in the league. The Blackhawks have fallen off in recent years, but obviously Kane won the 3 Stanley Cups and has played a boatload of Stanley Cup playoff games. But I just feel like, you add guys into your locker room and into your team and into your culture that have that kind of a presence, that pretty much command that kind of respect and obviously can get the job done on the ice as well. I think that just kind of reverberates through the entire locker room. I think that, players kind of look at those guys, they look up to them. I mean, you look at like Alexis Lafreniere and Capo Caco, just for example, they're both on record as saying that their favorite player growing up was Patrick Kane. Now Patrick Kane's their teammate. That's pretty cool. And I just feel like, you add former Stanley Cup champions like that. You add guys that have been on, a lot of all-star teams. That makes a big-time impact, and it just strengthens the culture, which is already a strength of this team. The chemistry's been very good over the past couple of seasons, especially last year. But you add two pieces like that, and forget about what they do on the ice, which is also very impactful. But as far as just the intangibles go, I just think it makes your team that much stronger, that much more focused. I mean, like I said, yesterday's game against the Predators, if there's any such thing as a letdown game, and we can debate that, but if there is, that's a prime example of a letdown spot, and it just didn't happen. The Rangers go out and skate circles around the Predators and beat them 7-0. And as far as the more tangible things with Tarasenko and Kane, I mean, they've both done really well since coming over to the Rangers. 19 games for Tarasenko, 5 goals, 8 assists. He's a +6 in that time. 13 block shots, 25 hits. He has averaged 15 minutes and 50 seconds of ice time. And then with Patrick Kane, he's now skated in 9 games with the Rangers, 3 goals, 4 assists. He's a +1, 4 block shots, 2 hits, and averaging 18:02 of ice time per night. We've talked about some of the intangible things that they bring to the table, but as far as on ice goes, I mean, they've both been very, very good. Don't get me wrong. I think they're making a tremendous impact on this team on the ice. They obviously make the lineup a lot deeper, and they take that right wing position, which had been such a weakness for the Rangers, and it's now a strength because you've got Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko as your top 2 right wingers. But I feel like both of them are capable of more, especially Patrick Kane. And again, Kane, hey, 7 points in 9 games. That's a pretty solid start with your new team. But there's been times where I think he's been a little tentative, a little bit pass happy, and I realize he's a great passer, and it's to be expected. We've talked about this in the past. He's on a new team, wants to set up his new teammates for goals and all that good stuff. But when Patrick Kane really begins to assert himself, I feel like he's just going to take his game to a whole nother level. So we have that to look forward to as Ranger fans as well. And Tarasenko, I mean, he's been very good as well. I feel like he can go to a whole nother level too, though, especially playing with Mika and Kreider. He's playing currently with Kreider. No, with Mika and Panarin. There we go. Panarin, Mika, and Tarasenko. And it's funny that I mentioned that, and I couldn't think of the lines, because I'm going to talk about in just a second here that I don't think the Rangers should be changing lines anytime soon. But Tarasenko, whoever he's been playing with for the Rangers, he's pretty much hit the ground running. But still, I feel like there's a whole nother level that he can get to as well, especially when you consider the quality of his teammates, and when you consider the fact that that Panarin and Mika and Tarasenko line just looks borderline unstoppable right now. So good stuff there. And like I said, Kane and Tarasenko making an impact on the ice. I think they're also making a positive impact as far as the chemistry and just the culture, which was already a strength of this team, but I think they're just making it that much better and that much stronger. Like I said just a second ago, I do have to make a call here for the Rangers to stick with the same line combinations going forward. I mean, I can't imagine they would do anything to shuffle the deck, even like a minor adjustment going into this next game. How can you possibly change line combinations? Even the Rangers, how can you possibly change line combinations when you've won your last 2 games by a final combined score of 13-0? I don't think even the Rangers can do that, but I just want to say, the Rangers play the Hurricanes next. They got 2 games against the Hurricanes. If the Rangers on Tuesday, say the first period goes by, scoreless first period, the Rangers aren't really doing anything offensively, stick with these same line combinations. I don't want to see the Rangers doing something radically different at the start of the second period just because they didn't score a goal in the first period. I think these current Ranger line combinations are clearly working, and if they have a quiet first period against the Canes or whatever the case might be, I think you stick with it. You let them work their way out of it just based on what they've done in these last handful of games here for the New York Rangers. So a big-time call from me to Gerard Gallant and the Ranger coaching staff to just stick with these same line combinations. Please do that. To kind of wrap things up here for today, first of all, a big shout out to anybody that went to these Ranger games. Obviously an electric atmosphere in Madison Square Garden. Garden was rocking the entire night, and that had to be whether you saw the game against Pittsburgh or the game against Nashville. Either one of those games had to be just a complete blast to attend and watch live, just seeing the Rangers, light up their opponents left and right. One other thing I want to mention here, touch on it just a second ago, but the Rangers' upcoming schedule, they're going to be home against the Canes on Tuesday. They are then at the Canes on Thursday and then at the Panthers on Saturday. The Saturday game begins at 5. But like I mentioned earlier in the episode, the Rangers have just 12 regular season games left. We're at the point where we're hoping that the Rangers have more playoff games remaining than regular season games remaining. Obviously, that would mean the Rangers are going on a pretty deep run, and I think we're all hopeful and pretty much expecting that to happen. We're confident in this team right now. But as far as a standings update, Rangers are currently 6 points behind the Canes. They are about to play them twice. Canes do have 2 games in hand. But there's a chance for the Rangers to make up some ground here. And they're also still 5 points behind the New Jersey Devils. The Devils won their game against the Lightning yesterday, so we'll see. And that kind of leads me into one final thing that I want to talk about here in today's episode. So, we could debate the importance of home ice advantage, and I saw a couple of comments on the most recent YouTube episode, people kind of talking about that. It's one of those things where home ice advantage in the NHL and the Stanley Cup playoffs, it's not the end-all, be-all. It's not like, the team with home ice advantage wins 95% of the playoff series. It's nothing like that, and certainly if you don't have home ice, you can still very well win a playoff series against whomever you might be playing. But everything else being equal, yeah, I'd like the Rangers to have home ice advantage, at least in the first round. I'd like to be able to catch either the Devils or the Hurricanes, finish in first or second, give yourself home ice to begin the Stanley Cup playoffs, especially when you consider what happened last year. The Rangers last year in the Stanley Cup playoffs played 20 games, and they had a final record in those 20 games of 10-10. The Rangers in the playoffs last year at home were 8-2. On the road, they were 2-8. And if I can remember this off the top of my head here, the only 2 home losses were Game 1 against Pittsburgh and Game 5 against Tampa Bay. The only 2 road wins, Game 6 against Pittsburgh and Game 7 against the Hurricanes. So that was it. Other than that, whoever had home ice in the Ranger playoff games, the other 16 Ranger playoff games won the game. I'm not saying that things can't be different this year. I mean, I think the Rangers, another year wiser, another year older for a lot of these players. They have Stanley Cup playoff experience. I would expect them to hopefully be better on the road this year than they were last year. And, we'll see how everything shakes out. But I can't completely ignore that either. Again, home ice not the end-all, be-all. But when you have splits like that, 8-2 at home in the playoffs last year versus 2-8 on the road, yeah, I'd like to have home ice advantage, especially in the first round, if that can, be on the table and if that can hopefully come to fruition. I certainly would not say no. But that will do it for today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers, your team every day. I want to thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. If you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. And definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time.